Being 6:00 p.m. on September 17th, 2019, I call this regular meeting of the Montgomery County Board of County Commissioners to order. We're pleased tonight to have the pastor from Lovejoy United Methodist Church with us to offer our invocation for tonight's meeting. Mr. Wells, thank you for taking your time out of your day to come join us, and we ask you to please offer our request for divine guidance and governance over this board and those assembled here for the purpose of serving Montgomery County.
Thank you. Let us pray. Gracious God, as we pause in prayer this evening, first we want to say thank you. Thank you for providing what we have needed and not what we have wanted. Second, we are reminded in Paul's letter to Timothy that we should offer supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings for all, for kings and for all in high positions. So tonight we take time to pray for these leaders here and for all who are gathered, and we ask for your wisdom in the decisions made here. Lastly, we thank you for these people's willingness to serve. May you continue to use them for the good of your kingdom. Lord God, we ask all these things in your name, the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you again, Pastor Wells. Mr. Woodard, would you please lead us to our Pledge of Allegiance?
If you are able, please rise and join us in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business tonight is approval of the agenda items to be discussed by the board. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion made by Commissioner Mack,
Second.
second by Commissioner Matheny. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. We have several presentations on our agenda tonight. The first is an honorary acknowledgement, which we've done a couple of times recently. And while these circumstances are unfortunate, which transpired to call for this presentation, the results are truly fortunate. This presentation is to thank our emergency responders, EMS crews, and 9/11 staff for their teamwork resulting in the saving of a life after a cardiac arrest. I will ask Mr. Dutton, Montgomery County EMS Director, to come forward and introduce the recipients.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. County Manager. Glad to be back in front of everyone. I got Dr. Harmony with me tonight, and he's going to make a little speech right quick too.
Yes, thank you for your time, Commissioners, this evening. Matt Harmony, Medical Director for First Health EMS. It's a great pleasure to be back tonight. While it is a tragic event, cardiac arrest that we have in our communities, we're very excited to celebrate what we consider a save and bringing someone back to life. In fact, we're fortunate to have Mr. Reynolds with us tonight, as well as the staff that you had mentioned. And it's really a team effort, and we're happy to involve telecommunicators, first responders, our paramedics, and it truly takes a team effort to have a successful event like this tonight. And it's really exciting to be here to celebrate this with your community. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dutton to have our folks that were directly involved with the care, and also Mr. Reynolds to come forward.
Yeah, this is a special treat tonight because this is our third one we've had this year. We've not had the pleasure of having the patient with us. So tonight, Mr. Reynolds has been gracious enough to come up, and he's going to stand up here with us while we make the presentations. And the telecommunicators, the 911 center here in Montgomery County, is actually the very first step in a cardiac arrest and performing and getting that CPR started. And unfortunately, they couldn't be with us tonight, but I'm going to call them out anyway. Jenny Green, who's been a telecommunicator here for many years, and Casey Dennis. And then along with those, just going to turn around here. Our rescue squad had a large presence, and like Dr. Harmony said, it takes a team. And you're gonna see tonight, we have a big team. We had a really nice team on this event, and it caused us to have this outcome. So with Montgomery County Rescue, Ethan Sasser.
Sir.
Nicholas Batten. Cameron Batten. They run through. Weston Lineberry. Robbie Smith, who's also our county emergency manager and a member of the rescue squad. And then Jordan Taylor, who was not able to be with us tonight either. He's with rescue. And then the EMS crew that was on this call, and I think you'll hear some familiar names. Alton McCaskill, paramedic. Al's been in front of us already this year for cardiac arrest save. Congratulations. Tanya Freeman, who actually is an EMS employee now, was right as a student doing her clinicals during this time. So she got started off with a bang. Congratulations. Jacob King. He's a paramedic with us, also serves with the rescue squad. Congratulations, sir. Andy Sanders, and I know all of you have seen Andy up here with us before too. This is multiple cardiac arrest saves. Congratulations. Andy's supervisor on that shift. And then Kevin Kearns with EMT on that call also. He couldn't be with us tonight either. So, big round of hand for these guys. Not take up much more time, but I'll be remiss to say that we also have with us on our team tonight our training officers, Chris Brewer, we've got Mike Crowder, Mark Potts, and Jennifer Boswell, and then our executive director, Barry Britt, EMS director is Donna Strong, and Buddy Williams, not Tim, is Tim in there, and also EMS director Tim. So without them, none of this would be possible. Okay, and Jerry, would you like to say something?
Well, I appreciate everything. God has given me a second chance, and I appreciate everything they have done for me. And if I can do anything else for whoever, I will.
Well, I think you've done all we need you to do for sure. We're just glad to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Jerry, let's get a real quick picture and then we're gonna.
Squeeze in tight, Andy.
Whole lot of people to get.
Yes, sir. I can't, I'm gonna have to have two rows. Okay, there you go. Squeeze it in. Okay. All right, there you go, that's better. Mike, need to see you. Turn, Alex, turn it, there you go. There you go, all right.
Get your good side, Alex.
Hold on, and one more. Hold up. Good deal.
Thank you.
Again, our many thanks are expressed to the volunteers and to the staff who perform such difficult and demanding work on behalf of their fellow residents. So thank you, all of you. Our next presentation is from the Tax Department and concerns the 2020 tax reevaluation process. The board received an update on the progress of the reevaluation at our August work session, and tonight's presentation is informational in scope, but will be the backbone of our process. The board will have a month to review the figures presented tonight, and there will be a public hearing next month, the month of October, at the Commissioners' meeting, at which time the schedule of values will be adopted. Mr. Woodard, I'll let you introduce the presentation and the presenters.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. as the chairman said, that this is the backbone, this very large volume here, the schedule of values that will be the basis of our 2020 revaluation, effective January 1st, 2020. Montgomery County is on an 8-year cycle, and so it has been 8 years since the last schedule of values, and this schedules will be applied to the residences and building structures and businesses in the county. And we have contracted with Pearson Appraisal Service. Most of y'all have met Bob before, and he's certainly been out in the county, and I think most of the residents counties that have met Bob now, as part of his responsibility is putting his eyes and feet on every property to make sure that we have an accurate listing on our tax card. So, Mr. Pearson, if you'll come forward, and Vicki, I don't know if you and Connie want to join him up at the podium, or you're going to pass. Let Bob do talking.
My name is Bob Pearson. I am president of Pearson Appraisal Services. We do a lot of work in North Carolina, Virginia, Delaware, but my focus has been on Montgomery County for about the last year. We have, as of tonight, got your schedule of values in place. These are the rules and the rates that we'll be using here in the county. And once again, we're trying to visit all the properties. We're taking real good pictures. We're trying to meet the public. Everything that we do now is going to be based on sales in neighborhoods, different areas of the county. Our objective is to appraise each and every property at its true value. And that's our objective. And so far, it's been a real good experience. And I have no reason to think that it won't be. I've pretty much been working over in Yard Point for about the last 6 weeks. And that's been pretty pleasant. But in the work that we do, we don't have any preconceived ideas of value. We let the market talk to us. And we had some experiences over there that we had to adjust some golf course lots and some interior lots down considerably. The market's pretty stable throughout the county, and the market's pretty good right now. And in addition to the schedule of values, there's a use value section of the manual, R, which gives you the new proposed use value rates here in the county. If anybody's got any questions, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
They say we gotta read this before next month.
And if you need any help with that, a lot of these are just numbers because of the computer system we have. We had to put in a lot of numbers.
Okay.
So
Thank
the
you.
manual is really very much like the old manual. But when you get a new computer system, you have to adapt, and that's what we've tried to do here.
Any questions or comments, anybody?
We'll measure your success by the number of appeals we get next year, I guess.
Well, if anybody does appeal, our objective is to listen and to try to be fair. And there will be appeals, and there will be some errors, and the only mistake I'm going to make is if I don't detect them and correct them at that time. But I will assure you that every effort will be made to try to get it right the first time. But sometimes there are things you just don't see. There are facts you don't know about. And once we go through the process, we will correct anything and everything that, to our knowledge, the best that we can. And if at any time you want me to work with you, assist you, help you with anything, if you'll let Ms. Manis know, I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Thank
Thanks
you.
to the staff, too, in the tax department, because I know this has been a busy year for all of you. Thank you. Commissioners, if there are any further questions you have prior to our next meeting, please contact our manager, and he'll try to coordinate and get some answers for us. Our final presentation is from Mrs. Hope Davis. Ms. Davis is a distinguished 4-H member and was chosen to represent 4-H at the annual County Commissioner Conference last month. Hope is here to share her insight and experiences with 4-H and as a representative from Montgomery County. Hope, we're delighted to have you up here tonight before our Board of County Commissioners.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Hope Davis, and I have been a member of Montgomery County 4-H for 8 years. During this time, I've held several positions as a county council member, and most recently, I was inducted into North Carolina 4-H Honor Club. During my years of 4-H, I have learned a lot. And 4-H can be summed up as the largest youth organization in the United States, and its motto is to make the best better. Through this organization, I have learned many valuable life skills and lessons, such as the importance of community service, leadership, public speaking, and life lessons. Although I have to state the most beneficial thing I have learned is the importance of leadership. Most recently, I got to expand my leadership roles because I received the privilege of attending Youth Voice for the second time on August 23rd and 24th. On this 2-day weekend, youth across the state came together with their county commissioners to understand the importance of local government. I can speak for all the youth that attended is that we all underestimated the significance that our county government has in our lives. For example, we had a simulation budget game where we all became county commissioners and we had to construct a budget for the year. Even though the game is all hypothetical, it is difficult to decide what programs to cut or add when we are working with other people. To understand how we work with other people, we were able to do a personality assessment. Each person has a specific color: blue, gold, green, or orange. These colors can accurately represent a person's true personality and how we can work with other people despite our differences. Through Youth Voice, many 4-H'ers and Boys and Girls Club members got to experience how to be a leader for the weekend. I can personally state that it has allowed me to reflect on how I wanted to give back to my community. Being only 17 years old, I have thought that I can only make an impact on my community when I went to school for 4 years and graduated and started my career. However, leadership does not have a start or expiration date. An individual must decide their responsibility for not only giving back to their community, but also to their country and their world. I would like to now take this time to thank the county commissioners for their continual support of 4-H. It gives the youth across this county numerous opportunities to make the best better. Now I'd like to ask Miss Chrissy Haynes, my 4-H agent, to come forward as we show our appreciation for your support of our summer program.
Good evening, commissioners. How are you? This summer, you all supported our Montgomery County 4-H Day Camp to help send 58 kids to Millstone 4-H Camp for the week. It was a full week of camp opportunities for our youth from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we ran it from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. so that would give parents the opportunity to get to work on time and to be able to leave work on time. So it was a wonderful week at little to no cost for the kids who attended. I give you all our latest thank you card for you. You have an individual picture in your thank you card of this same photo, but our young people all signed it who attended camp that week, and we wanted to present that to you and thank you for giving them the opportunity to attend camp. Some of the things they got to do there are the same opportunities they would get if they went to overnight camp. So that would be canoeing, horseback riding, archery, learning to shoot a bow and arrow for the first time, rifle rigging, shoot guns, arts and crafts. So all of those opportunities, a lot of our kids have never done those things, and they got to experience that thanks to your support. So thank you very much. We'd like to present this to you. Do you guys have any questions for Hope for what she spoke about with Youth Voice or about our summer day camp?
Do you have any questions?
I just say thank you, Hope, for participating for
Thank you. Thank you
2
for
years.
letting me know.
Enjoyed having you at the conference.
Yes, I enjoy it very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Chrissy, for all you do for our kids and through 4-H.
Thank you.
Appreciate
We
it.
appreciate your continual support of all cooperative extension programs in Montgomery County.
Will this be something we're going to do next year?
The day camp or Youth Voice?
Both.
Youth Voice is supported by the North Carolina Community, or the County Commissioners Association,
Right.
and it's been going on for many years now, so I assume that it will continue. I would like, Commissioner Matheny and I were talking, it would be nice if we could increase the number of youth who got to go from each county each year, because right now we can only send one youth per county. So hopefully that will increase in support, or that we could fund sending one young person, that would be great. Day camp, I'm hoping that you all will continue to support that option for our young people too. For the past 2 years, we've been able to make it work. Matthew and I have worked that out together. I appreciate your support. The school system has donated the school bus for us and the gas, and all we had to pay out of our 4-H budget. We did support a few young people out of that we wanted to be able to increase our number to 65. And so we did do 7 kids, and then we pay our bus driver out of our 4-H budget as well, so that she has an incentive for coming with us to camp. She is one of our 4-H club leaders, but she gives up her whole week, so we do help with that cost too. But I hope that we will continue to be able to support sending some young people to camp every summer. Thank you for asking, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a public comment period during which the Board of Commissioners hears from members of the community. If you're present tonight in regards to the proposed changes to the county ordinance for cell towers, then I'll ask for those comments to be held until we open that public hearing. Otherwise, we have one person signed up tonight to speak. That is Miss Diana Riviere. And Ms. LaRiviere is the impetus for our proclamation that we're doing tonight on our consent agenda for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, the month of September.
I'm going to warn you all that I'm going to cry. Okay. My name is Diana LaRiviere, and I live at 320 Zion Church Road in Mount Gilead. And I'm just going to read so that I can hopefully get through it. I'm here tonight to speak to you about pediatric cancer, and I'm requesting that the county make a proclamation designating September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in honor of the children that have lost their lives, that are still fighting for their lives, and that have survived. Okay. On August 5th of last year, my husband and I became a part of a statistic when we were told that our child had cancer. Our son was diagnosed with stage 4 high-risk neuroblastoma, which is a very rare and aggressive cancer, and it's completely stripped him of his childhood for the past year and will continue to do so for the next 2 years while he continues to undergo extensive treatment. Since 1980, there have only been 4 drugs approved by the FDA to be used with children. So, for example, out of 15 drugs, which includes immunotherapy drugs and chemotherapy drugs that my child has to go under, the FDA has only approved 1 immunotherapy drug. Every single chemotherapy drug that he has taken, and he has taken 10 cycles, is only approved in adults. And he takes the same dose that an adult your size takes. And when he took them, he's a little bit bigger now, but when he took them, his average weight was between 28 and 34 pounds. There is the immunotherapy drug that is approved for him to take, attacks every nerve cell in your body at once, good and bad, to try to target the cancer cells in his body. And so for 10 hours a day for an entire week, he's on a morphine drip to try to counteract the pain that causes. They're forced to undergo extensive treatment, and these children luckily are resilient and they do bounce back for the most part. My son has had a lot of setbacks in his treatment. He had resection surgery in November, so he had 5 solid tumors in his body that were removed, and then he developed very quickly, which usually takes around 2 years, scar tissue, and had to have emergency bowel obstruction surgery. In a year, he's on his 16th feeding tube that has been inserted into his stomach. Usually a child within 3 years only has 3. His body keeps rejecting them. So his stomach bile leaked out over to his incision after his emergency bowel surgery and caused an infection, which resulted in a wound vac, and then he developed shingles from his chickenpox vaccine, which is no reason not to give your child a vaccination. information, but just from being immunocompromised and the stress of it, he had to spend 2 months in a special room with ventilation so that he could be away from everybody else that was also immunocompromised. So, 1 in 285 children are diagnosed, and that's 46 each day, which, if you want to break it down, is 2 classrooms full of children each single day. And in 2019, the statistic is 1 in 5 children will still die of cancer. And so that's 70 potential life years gone. Blood is only good for 42 days and platelets for 5. So donating is extremely important to save lives. I stopped counting when Max got up to 20 blood transfusions, and I'm not sure what he's at now. He's also had platelets, probably around 16, and he will require more. Only about 3% of the population actually donates blood, and only 4% of federal cancer funds are given to pediatric cancer research, which is 4 cents on the dollar. Most of the funding for research studies is provided by nonprofit foundations started by parents who have lost their children to pediatric cancer. Montgomery County has the opportunity to be on the forefront of not only supporting the children in our county that have or are still battling this horrendous disease, but to show support for all children and to raise awareness and to let our state, our region, and our country know that we believe our children are worth more than 4, and that every September we will proudly show out for a cause that is important for the survival of future generations. So far, both Lincoln and Stanley counties have unanimously voted in this proclamation for this cause. And I just want to say that on behalf of my son and for all those that are giving up their childhood and living in hospital beds, praying for their lives, that I do thank you for your kind consideration of this request. And I hope that Montgomery County will vote to make this proclamation for September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. It's not recognized by the government. Gold was chosen in 1996 by parents because gold is considered to be a very valuable thing, and the color is now representing what is most valuable to parents, which is their child and their child's life. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone
Chairman,
else?
For the record, Ms. La Riviere put her address on the sign-up sheet.
She did.
That's why she did not have to announce it. And Commissioner Crisco donated his 3 minutes to her. What's her address?
234 J. Bob Lane,
234 J. Bob Lane.
Biscuit.
And if there's no one else wishing to speak at the public forum, maybe one of the commissioners would like to read the proclamation, or before, I know it's on the consent agenda, but for those in the audience that don't have a packet.
Page 89,
Huh?
page 89. Commissioner Henson is looking for it. I think he's going to read it for us.
And special thanks to Manager Matthew Woodard for constructing this resolution. And it is as read, a resolution of the Montgomery Board of Commissioners in support of federal funding appropriations for childhood and adolescent cancer research and the designation of September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas the American Cancer Society lists the number of new childhood and adolescent cancer cases this year in excess of 10,000. Whereas the American Cancer Society reports the number of childhood and adolescent cancer deaths this year in excess of 1,100. Whereas the Childhood Cancer STAR Act was signed into law in May 2018 to advance pediatric cancer research. Whereas, according to the advocacy group Cure Childhood Cancer, less than 4% of federal funding for cancer research is allocated to childhood cancers. Whereas, continued federal allocations are desperately needed to support the research, treatment, and eventual eradication of childhood and adolescent cancer. Whereas in 2012, President Barack Obama proclaimed September to be National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas Montgomery County families are among those whose lives are forever changed with the diagnosis of their child as having cancer. Now therefore let it be resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners do hereby advocate for additional funding for childhood and adolescent cancer research, treatment, and support for victims and family members, and do hereby proclaim September to be Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the Montgomery County, adopted this the 17th day of September 2019.
Thank you, Commissioner Henson. Okay, Commissioners, you've received and reviewed the items on our consent agenda tonight. Are there any questions or of the manager regarding any of these items? If not, is there a motion to accept these items?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, that's approved. The next item of business is a public hearing before the Board of Commissioners, and this hearing is to receive public comment prior to the board taking action on text amendments to the county ordinances. There are two text amendment applications on the agenda, but they're both concern the same ordinance. The changes involve the placement and application for cell tower construction. I'll ask Mr. Gayhagen, the County Planning and Zoning Director, to come present his report and recommendation to the board. Mr. Gayhagen.
Good evening. We do have two text amendment requests tonight. Functionally, they do involve the same code, the Article 10, which is our wireless telecommunication section. We will take them as one public hearing, and any motion can be made on both at the same time. Article 10 does deal strictly with our wireless telecommunication towers. This function of the zoning ordinance was adopted, I believe, around 2013. Shortly after I began employment with the county, we put this in place. Jonathan Yates, who's in attendance tonight, sitting behind me there, requested text amendment TA-01-2019. His request was to add wireless towers and support structures as a conditional use in the R1 district. Upon his request, I reviewed the ordinance and found that it probably would benefit us to initiate our own amendment behind his to clean up problematic ordinance language and streamline the process for application. I believe many of you are familiar with our current process and how lengthy and time-consuming that can be, and whether that's a necessary process. So we investigated that, and I went to the planning board twice, and we reviewed this amendment. The planning board did review it on July 22nd initially, and then on August 26, 2019, they officially made a review and recommendation to this board, which I'll go over later on as I go through this. The full text amendment was included in the agenda packet. Just to kind of go over briefly what the amendment will change or proposes to change. One will look at reducing the setback requirements. Currently, those requirements are at 100 feet. That's a flat measurement. It doesn't take into consideration the height of the tower. It doesn't really work as well as it probably should. It will be a one-for-one requirement, so essentially as the tower goes up in 1 foot in height, it must be set back 1 foot in height from, or setback 1 foot from the property line. Those do come with a caveat that the setback may be reduced according to engineered fall data. That was included as agenda attachment 1 in the agenda packet. That's a few examples of engineered fall data documents provided by Mr. Yates. In those documents, I'd highlighted the relevant sections there as far as what those towers would change. I will say that if you go to the first attachment there where it discusses the tower would yield buckled at the 155-foot elevation, resulting in a maximum 40-foot fall radius, that 40-foot would essentially become the setback. Mr. Yates can certainly comment to why that isn't a danger to the general public. Can do that after I finish my report. The planning board did discuss this with them and found cause that would be perfectly applicable. And Mr. Yates can certainly make the same case to you as well. And I do agree. I think that's perfectly fine. The setbacks will be taken from the center of the tower for monopole and self-supporting towers, or from anchor points of the guide towers. We did request that fences and accessory structures adhere to the same setbacks as the underlying zoning district. So those would still be set back according to whatever the standards of the district is. We changed the facility sites. Initially, they were a minimum size of 10,000 square feet. Doesn't really fit every situation, so we opted to request that be changed to accommodate at least 4 wireless carriers. Typically, that's going to be shown on a site plan that we look at the construction stage to determine, or the plan review stage, there'll be a dashed outline or something to demonstrate additional space for more carriers. Government-owned and operated towers, temporary towers that would provide coverage during declared emergencies or special events, towers constructed by public utilities for internal communication purposes, towers providing fixed wireless internet, and towers for amateur radio facilities and co-location of antennas on existing towers would be exempt from the provisions of this ordinance. I believe Commissioner Matheny, you remember we discussed several years ago with LRB Telephone their issues with the permitting of towers and how difficult it was for them to site their fixed wireless internet towers. This would completely exempt them from the process, so they can put those towers up and provide internet service where we otherwise don't have it in the county. So this would help them be able to construct those towers. Access requirements, which would essentially be your ingress and egress to the facilities, have been changed to reflect recommended standards by the North Carolina Fire Code. The requirement right now isn't really clear. It's, I believe, a 12-foot gravel road. 12-foot is probably not appropriate to get an emergency vehicle down to the facility. So the request is to change that to 20 feet wide, exclusive of shoulders, with a vertical clearance of not less than 13 feet 6 inches, and the road must be of an all-weather type. Of particular interest, we are changing or proposing to change where these towers can be located. Right now, towers over 150 feet in height are a conditional use permit, conditional use request, and they're not permitted in the R1 district in any capacity. It's been found that that really didn't help the public at all when it comes to not permitting in the R1 district. Primarily along the lake, service is still lacking, and applications are just not able to happen because they're not permitted there. The proposal would permit monopole towers up to FAA non-illumination height, and Mr. Yates can comment on that, but essentially that is where the FAA will approve the tower not to be illuminated. Rather than go with a flat 150-foot, 199-foot, the planning board opted to go with this standard because that non-illumination height can change depending on the distance from a airfield or something of that nature. Those types of towers would be permitted by right in the R2 and R3 district. If you remember, several months ago, we had a conditional use permit at the Brutonville School for a cell tower. That tower would have been a permitted use, provided that it would reach the non-illumination height and not exceed that. Towers in the R1 district for parcels greater than 5 acres would also be permitted by right. For R1 zone lots of 5 acres or less, towers would be considered a conditional use and subject to substantial requirements as detailed in Section 7 of the attached text amendment. These would include a required neighborhood meeting, balloon testing, and photographs with broad public notice, additional access requirements, and increased buffer standards. This portion of the amendment is intended to address Mr. Yates' request of TA-01. Of course, again, he can comment on those standards as you have any questions for him. Monopole and self-supporting towers, which would be your typical lattice towers, would be permitted by right up to 250 feet in commercial and industrial districts. Any tower that would be over the allowable height or different type for the district would kick back to a conditional use permit, so the board would have to review it as a conditional use. Letters of intent from wireless carriers and copy of radio licenses would be required to be included with any tower application. Those were included, the radio licenses have been included as attachment 2. The idea here is that we prevent speculative towers. As you know, we've had 7 tower applications since 2012, and of those 7, only 1 has been constructed. The idea is that by requiring a letter of intent from a licensed carrier included with those radio licenses, we kind of deflect those speculative towers, which have, they've become a time waster for staff, they've become a time waster for the board. They're never going to build those. They don't have the wireless carrier involved, they don't have the radio license. The idea here is that any tower that the board would look at or any tower approved administratively would be constructed because it's intended to. They have been requested by that provider to build the tower. Decommissioning statements would be required. They will mimic the decommissioning statement required for a solar farm, and they'd also have to be recorded with the registered deeds. The planning board did vote unanimously 4-0 to recommend approval of both these text amendment requests to the Board of Commissioners tonight. And they also voted unanimously to approve of the included consistency statements. As usual, this would require the adoption of the consistency statement prior to the motion to adopt or deny the request. It is two separate amendment requests, but as it does deal with the same ordinance, we can take that in one motion. I'm available to answer any questions that the board may have, and Jonathan is here as well from Charleston, and he's certainly able to answer anything the board might have for him.
Mr. Gahagan has reviewed the proposed text amendments and the recommendation of the County Planning Board. His recommendation is to adopt the changes proposed under these text amendments. Are there any questions from the board to Mr. Gahagan? Okay, at this time, we'll offer Mr. Yates a chance if he wants to come up to add.
Thank you so very much, Chair and members of the County Commission. My name is Jonathan Yates, and I've had the pleasure over the past couple of months of working with Andrew, and it has been indeed pleasure. The purpose tonight is to try to bring forward the communication tower ordinance for Montgomery County, which is essential. I'm not young, as you can tell. I started in this business in 1995 working on cell towers in the Carolinas. And when I started, cell towers were sort of, cell phones were sort of a rich man's toy. Businessmen had them, rich folks had them. You move forward from 95 to almost the 25 years I've been in this, they're everywhere. Everyone has them. When I'm leaving my hometown, go to the airport, it used to be I'd have a newspaper or a magazine, and everyone around me would have a newspaper or a magazine. Now they're all staring at their phone. I don't know exactly what they're staring at it, but they're staring at it all the time. So it's become sort of ubiquitous. That's sort of the fun part. The serious part goes as follows. We had a very good presentation today about that gentleman had the cardiac arrest and incredible work by your team. And I don't have the statistics for Montgomery County, and I apologize that I don't, but in my home county of Charleston County, South Carolina, our 911 consolidated dispatch, 84% of all their calls into the consolidated dispatch come from a wireless device, and that's increasing every month. We just had a little bit of a scare there about two weeks ago called Hurricane Dorian. Thank the Lord didn't come through, but that's when those networks are essential. We didn't have Dorian, but we had wind, we had rain, and a lot of calls. When I was much younger, I was in a remote part of my county when I was 18 years old, and I had a blowout on the car. The scariest thing I did was walking up to that farmhouse door to knock on the door, hoping to call my parents, not knowing what was going to open the door. I have a 20-year-old son. He has a phone on his belt. He has a similar blowout. He's going to call me immediately. And that's just the beauty of wireless. What we're trying to do tonight is streamline the rules a little bit with appropriate protection where we can get it where the folks are. As I said, when I started, it was mainly where folks worked. It was businessmen that had them, doing business on them. Now a lot of folks, it's their primary source of communication. We're seeing in the United States today another number that keeps increasing is 55% of all households have gone wireless only. We saw a spike in that back in 08, 09, the Great Recession, the Great Downturn, whatever you call it. A lot of folks had to make some tough decisions to keep food on the table. And one of those decisions was what we call cord cutting, where they got rid of their landline. So that's the kind of option we're trying to do. But what we tried to do is do it in a way at all times to protect the county. We included the R1, but the R1 has to come back before this board with a separate set of rules, a balloon test, community meeting to allow this board to make the decision, is this one appropriate or not? One of the key factors too, working with Andrew, when I first talked to him, he said we had all these speculative towers. Folks came here saying they're going to build a tower. We went to all the trouble to approve it, and they took off on us. Well, we got them. To make an application, you got to have a letter of intent from a licensed carrier. You also got to show their radio licenses. So we hope we squelch that. And another important factor, when you talk about height, we talked about bringing it below the level required by the FAA to illuminate. Particularly when we're going to residential districts, getting rid of the lights, I think, is important to most folks. They want what we have to offer, they just don't want to see us. So that's what we tried to do. But again, my thanks to Andrew and the hospitality this afternoon and the county manager. It has been a great pleasure to work with Montgomery County on this important project, and I thank y'all.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, Mr. Yates has asked like we ought to add to the ordinance to make the minimum 3 towers. So you can't just build one, you build 3.
Okay, at this time, we'll hear from any citizen who wishes to address the board on this subject. During our public comment period, residents allowed up to 3 minutes for comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? If no one else wishes to comment, then there is a motion. Is there a motion from the board to close the public comments portion of this hearing?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Mack. Is there a second?
Second.
By Commissioner Matheny. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the public comment period is closed, and unless there's further debate between the board, we'll now consider the merits of this request. Is there a motion from the board as to whether the proposed text amendments TA 01 2019 and TA 02 2019 are consistent or inconsistent with the county's adopted use plan?
I'll move that the proposed amendments are consistent with the county's proposed land use plan.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Henson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The board has found that these text amendments to be consistent with the county's land use plan. We now need a motion to accept or reject the text amendments TA 01 2019 and TA 02 2019. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion that we accept the text amendments.
Motion made by Commissioner Crisco. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Mack. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll just say that I appreciate the work that Mr. Yates and Andrew and Matthew have put in on this, because it is, infrastructure is one of our greatest needs in the county, and that includes the availability of wireless communications. And I think by adopting these text amendments, that this will open the opportunity to improve our coverage significantly throughout the county.
I agree with that. Because some areas of our county, like where I live, we have no cell tower service. So, agree. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passed. Mr. Woodard, would you please proceed with the county manager's report?
I'd be delighted to. First item on the county manager's report tonight is a board appointment. The first one is Ms. Janet Deaton to the Montgomery County Planning Board.
I move to approve, or to appoint Ms. Deaton to the Montgomery County Planning Board.
Okay.
I will second that motion.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Matheny and seconded by Commissioner Mack. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The appointment is approved.
The second appointment for Ms. Navon Moore to the Montgomery County Planning Service for the Aging Board.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion to appoint Ms. Navon Moore to the Planning Services for the Aged Board.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Henson. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Mack. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Appointment is approved.
The third and final appointment for the board to consider is Mayor Dean Blake to the Montgomery County Library Board of Trustees.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we appoint Jimmy Blake to the Board of Library.
Motion made by Commissioner Mack. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Matheny. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? The appointment is approved.
The next item on the county manager's report is an update on the marketing efforts to promote development, interest, and the image of Montgomery County. The board chose the Saturday firm to lead those marketing efforts, and Chris Gilbert is our point person on that, so I'll ask Mr. Gilbert to come forward and to review the goals and objectives of the plan and the work that's being done today. As Chris comes up, though, I do want to mention two items that are in line with this discussion that will further lay the groundwork for him. It's two items that the staff and I have been working on recently, and kind of shows the conflict between the interest of what's good development and what's bad development, and what perspective you're on. The first is the work that we're doing with the Wildlife Commission. There are a lot more boaters on the lakes this summer, and so we have been getting a lot of complaints about boater behavior and enforcement of wildlife officers. And if you've been on the lake, you've noticed that there's now such a thing as a wake boat, and a wake boat can fill its tank, I guess, as a ballast to create a large wave that somebody can ski behind or surf behind without a rope. And so at any rate, those boats do create a 3-foot wave, and especially up in our northern lake, Baden Lake, that have floating piers, that a wake of such size creates havoc. And so we're having to address that. But talking with wildlife, I was shocked to hear, and I know Commissioner Matheny's been on these conversations, that wildlife has not added any new enforcement agents in North Carolina since 1973. So they're at the same number of enforcement officers on our waterways in our forests as they were in 1973. To let you know how life's changed since 1973, I asked Vicki to pull us some numbers. The tax value in 1973 of the lake region, Baden and Hillary in Montgomery County in 1973, it was $12 million of value. In 2019, the taxable value for Baden Lake and Lake Hillary is almost $1 billion. The number of boats that are registered in the tax office, now this number is really not a true reflection of the number of boats, because unfortunately some people don't list their boats, or they list it in their home counties. If they live in Guilford County and have a lake house, the boat's listed there. But we didn't have the data back to 1973, but if we go back to 1993, the number of boats that were listed in the Montgomery County Tax Office's personal property was a little over 1,800. In 2019, it's well over 4,000 number of boats in the county that are on the lake. If you go back to 2003, 16 years ago, the number of houses on Baden and Hillary was right at 3,000, and that's increased over 25% in the last 16 years. And so there are a lot of more people on the lake, a lot of more people using those resources, and when we look to market Montgomery County and we look towards our goal of growth, that those things have to be kept in mind. And so I want the board to know that we are meeting with our wildlife commissioner. District 6 is Monty Crump out of Rockingham. He's the out of Richmond County. He's the Rockingham city manager. We're also meeting with Jim Cogdell, who is the at-large wildlife commissioner, and he owns and operates the Fort Farm over in Stanley County. Is that the name of the fort? At any rate, we will be continuing those discussions. The board's concern, obviously, is safety on the river. We want growth, but we want to protect residential property, and we want everybody to be safe. And so people don't behave as well as they used to. I think it's an understatement on the river. The other thing that we're working on, and I'll be certainly asking the board for a delegation of 2 members to work with us, is that Andrew and I are working on a overlay for 24-27 corridor. Now that the bypass is open around Troy, that we are receiving request to do billboards. The board knows that our current ordinance only allows billboards on commercial and industrial property. Well, the bypass went where there was just trees, and that land was zoned residential, and so it's not eligible for any billboards there. Just last month, the board approved a rezoning up towards Bisco on Highway 2427. You know, with the 4-lane coming from Albemarle to the river, and with the 4-lane from the river coming to the bypass, that as part of our economic development plan, transportation was the key. That road, 2427, is the major corridor in the county, and I know Andrew and I, and I think I can speak for the board, that we see that as the growth corridor. And so Andrew and I are working on a overlay or rezoning that would create a new district in the county and go ahead and allow permitted uses anywhere along that corridor. Now, we want to work with the towns of Troy and Bisco because, for example, in the bypass here, the east end and the west end are both in Troy's jurisdiction. And in Bisco, obviously 2427 goes right through the middle of town. We don't want it to be inconsistent. We would like to try to meet with the towns and come up with an overlay that would be from county line to county line. Here is the growth corridor. Here is the uses that will be permitted. As the board knows now, under our current ordinances for commercial properties, that you're only allowed a handful of uses. For example, a gas station is not permitted. So if somebody wants to build a new gas station on the bypass, they're going to have to come before the board, in theory, to get it zoned from residential to commercial, and then they're going to have to come back once it's commercial and do a conditional use to do a gas station. And that's probably not development friendly on a corridor that we've been promoting as a growth for Montgomery County. And so Andrew and I will be working with that. We'll want two commissioners to meet with town representatives and try to hammer out those details as to what we want that overlay to look like. We'll have to deal with setbacks. You can look at other areas like Albemarle, for example, and look at maybe some mistakes that were made and how the county can balance those interests. Promoting growth, but yet not wanting to make it too congested and not wanting to harm any residential property. And so that's another thing that's in the hopper, so to speak. But Chris, I've talked too much. You're here to talk about marketing the image of Montgomery County. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Manager. Board remembers that the goal of the marketing plan was to take the collective information, opinion, perspectives, and assets of the county and kind of filter that through our long-term economic development strategies and hopefully deliver some recommendations from a marketing perspective that will help influence and promote tangible growth. And so that's what Matthew's been talking about for the last few minutes, is growth. That's the goal of this plan as well. We've taken some initial steps of getting out in the county. Saturday group, we visited all 3 lakes. We visited the National Forest, businesses and schools, and interviewed people that are responsible for those entities and are responsible for taking care of those. And while under this plan, we're not going to go as far as to do detailed capacity studies. They're very expensive. And we feel like we've got people who have their thumb on the pulse of the forest, both that work for the National Forest and work around the National Forest, private businesses. And so, but those people are responsible for maintaining and taking care of it. Their influence, they will influence the outcome of this plan and these recommendations heavily. And so sometimes the report, it's not going to all be roses. I hope that it will also be, look, this is something you don't need to waste your time and waste your money on, and we have to accept that and move forward. I think that's a good thing to get that hard information and push us towards a larger campaign of marketing and being attractive to younger populations, hopefully, and also to address some of the deficiencies that we may have. And so to date, we've been to, like I said, Lake Tillery, Baden Lake, Uray Forest, Star Works, Lily's Bridge Marina, Old North State Club. We've interviewed John Shaw, Chris Cagle, Mike Spizak with the U.S. Forest Service, Wynn Dozier, Greg Zephyr, Dr. Bledsoe, Rich Thompson, Brandon Holland, and Matthew Christian. We've got a few more people to interview and a few more places to hit, but hopefully before the end of the year, I'll be back before the board with the Saturday group to present the findings of the first phase of this study, this plan, I should say. I'm available for any questions if you got any. Happy to answer them.
And of course, those decisions will go into the consideration of the occupancy tax and how we promote the county.
Exactly.
The foundation will certainly work.
Anyone have any questions of Mr. Hilder?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, the final item on the county manager's report is the usual departmental reports. And as always, I appreciate staff taking time to be here, and they're available to answer any questions about their reports or any activity in their departments since last month.
Anyone have any questions of either the county manager or the staff? If not, are there any other comments?
Madam Chair, I'd like to take this opportunity to further thank our Extension Service for the work that they're doing with the youth of the county and also the services that they're providing throughout the county. Had an opportunity to attend the livestock show after the commissioners meeting, and it was truly amazing the work that they were doing with the young people and demonstrating the livestock and exhibiting and showing their livestock. It was truly amazing. And I would just like to say to the staff, thank you very much. And in addition, several days ago, I was over to get some information. And I was expecting to just get some pamphlets and leave. And I left with a litany of information that it was extremely and is extremely helpful. And we have a lot of services being provided throughout the county that in many instances we are not aware of. And we need to begin to take advantage of what is going on in the county. And that's just one agency, but I would just like to say thank you to Extension Service for all the work that they are doing.
Thank you, Commissioner Mack. I also want to say thank you because I enjoyed that day also. Those kids were so proud of their animals that they were showing him. Some of them were kind of stubborn. It was a rainy day, but there was still a good turnout, I think, that day. So thank you for that.
And if I could just piggyback off those comments, I have a meeting tomorrow, staff, cooperative extension meeting with the regional director for cooperative extension and the school system and the college. Of course, we're working on our ag education initiative. And this meeting will lead to meetings with the deans of agriculture and life sciences at state and A&T. Great resources here in the county, not only the cooperative extension, but Sand Hills Research Station. And the great science that's happening at those universities is being tested out on the fields of Montgomery County. And agriculture is not a just dumb laboring occupation anymore. It is as scientific as you can get and technological laden. And so we want to introduce that new face of agriculture to our students here in Montgomery County. Mm-hmm. And we want to partner with state and A&T to try to make it a research-based facility, and that we can show our students how they can change the world by advancing agricultural education and agribusiness. And so we're certainly excited about that meeting tomorrow.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, Ms. Diana, I don't want to butcher your last name, but I do want to thank you for bringing the Childhood Cancer Awareness Month to the attention of the board. And I hope that we made it ample clear with the support of our county manager that we do stand behind you and that we are offering our sincerest prayers to you and your family, and especially Max. And I hope that tonight that was made clear to you, and thank you for being here and bringing it to our attention and taking time from your schedule and time away from him. And it just means a lot to see community involvement like this. So just know that we are, as a county, we are standing behind you. Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? I'm sure we'll be seeing more, if not this year, next September anyway. You've got a little time to work on it.
And he'll be able to get out a little bit more, hopefully, soon.
Okay, good.
And hopefully the other children that are in the county that are battling, have battles.
Well, thank everyone for coming. Having completed our agenda, I adjourn this September 2019 meeting of the County Board of Commissioners.